this is going to be a new one for me to tackle. I got this guitar in, and the frets, they're ball-end frets, and they stick past the binding on one side. They were not centered in the fretboard when they were installed. Show you the front side. So here's the front. You can see how those frets, they're balled up. You know, they're not, you don't really take a file to that and then kind of shape them the way you would a traditional fret. They're really supposed to be installed centered and kind of have that nice rounded edge. So I'm gonna have to learn a new skill here, which is to remove these and reset them in the right locations. So hopefully we can do that. All right, so I have successfully got one of the frets off so far. I'm using sort of a combination of methods I'm finding online. I do have this little handy dandy fret removal set of pliers, really just a fancy pair of nippers. I feel like I paid like $5 or something like that on Temu. So nothing expensive here. What I did on the last one, I just have this this rag that's been kind of soaked in a little bit of water here, and I am applying some heat with the soldering iron to the fret through the moistened cloth, trying not to burn anything. That gets some moisture in there, loosens the glue in theory a little bit. Okay, put that up. And then going with the nippers, just kind of getting here and not applying a lot of pressure. I'm just kind of closing around it. So these are coming off pretty nicely. Not a lot of damage or anything like that. So I think this is going to work out pretty well. All right, so I'm going to stop it there and we'll come back once I'm ready to put these things in. Okay, so at this point in the process, I have removed all the frets that need to be repositioned. I've started to put some of them back in. I got the first 5 back in. I ended up not using the cloth and water with soldering iron the whole way because it seemed like there wasn't a ton of adhesive holding a lot of these down. So what I would use is the nippers and just try to get those as I went without doing anything. And if they popped up, I'd go ahead and remove them that way. If they were a little more stubborn, seemed like that wasn't coming out easily, then I'd go ahead and hit them with a soldering iron and a cloth approach. And that worked pretty well. Minimal damage to the board, honestly, getting those up. I was pretty pleased with that. Honestly, the damage to the board that I'm getting mostly is in the reinstall, because each of these frets, they have little teeth in them, and they want to go back into the grooves that are already in the board from their original installation, and in doing that, that positions them in the wrong spot. So I don't have one of the nice fret groove cleaning tools. I have now ordered one to kind of get down in there. I think when you use those, I used a small bladed screwdriver edge. You could also use like a flosser, like a toothpick flosser. The sharp end of that could fit down in there too. And you're just, kind of cleaning the crud out. And I know it looks like I'm being kind of rough on this. Part of that is because as part of the removal, I'm inevitably bending the fret wire just a little bit. And I need to ensure that we're fully seated across the board so we don't run into any issues with sort of high and low spots across the fret. That's looking pretty good there. Let's get my rock see how that's feeling. I mean, these are all coming in pretty good using this method. I've been, getting them in there pretty good. And so once you've done this, once you've got the, bopped down into place, you just take the very thin, I'm using a Star Bond, it says super fast, thin glue, super glue. And I got this at Rockler Woodworking. You can get something very similar from StuMac or, woodworking shops. This just happens to be local to me and works pretty well. I'm actually going to use another version of their product for the repairs to the board where I've got tear outs at the end. So just a thin line of super glue, and then you can use a paper towel to kind of clean up a little bit there. We will clean it up more at the end after it dries up, and then we'll fix the board a little bit. Where we do have the tear outs, what we'll do is we'll use they make a black product, black super glue product that you just kind of fill the hole and sand down. So I do have some of that as well. So there we go. That's how we're getting the frets back in there. I'll pick it back up when it's time to clean it. All right, so at this point I've got the frets in. I don't know if I mentioned in the video, but I also use this a little bit. This is like a call press that you use to put on a fret press or drill press, and you can push those in more evenly. I don't have like the handheld or the portable version. I have something I can put in the drill press, or I have a drill press and I could use for this, but opted not to. Instead, I just kind of use that a little bit to tap it in, but by and large, I use the rubber mallet to get these seated. I've gone through a little bit with the, just a sharp chisel, pulling off some of the super glue, the residue that's along the frets. I'm going to go back in here in a couple of minutes, and this will, some of this stuff looks worse than it is because there's still some super glue there. But there are a few spots I've kind of marked on the board where they're at that actually does have some tear out. So I'm using this product. It's a medium thick black super glue made by Star Bond. They're also the ones that made the super glue I was using for the frets themselves. And I may not have, I didn't cut that well enough. Let me recut the end of that. Okay. Now it should work. Assuming I can get the handy dandy fine point end back on it. Okay. Get these nice precision syringe type ends on these. And so I'm just gonna go into these tear outs. This is just kind of fill them up with this black glue, and then we'll even that out. So each spot that I have marked, I have a little bit of tear out that was a little more substantial. Some of the stuff that's just kind of rough from the glue, I'll just be able to get that out through sanding. It's not going to be a major issue. I'm putting a little bit more than I actually need on this. That way I can get plenty of sand down flush. Trying to make sure I actually need it in these spots. It's not just extra glue holding, making it look rough. Like I say, most of this honestly was not from the original tear out. It came about when I had to go back and press these in, and then they would shift as I was putting them in, and I would have to then pull them back out, reposition, and put them back. And so that process is really where I got the most damage to the board. Even then, this isn't a ton of damage. This is all stuff that can be fixed. And you got to kind of go into a project like this knowing that you're going to have to fix some issues like this. Like anytime you're removing frets or moving something from the fretboard that's glued in, it's going to leave a little bit of damage. So now that I've got that kind of sprayed in to fill it up, this is an accelerator that the company sells, so that basically within seconds you're in a position where you can clean this up. I probably put way too much in on. I do not know if this is safe for nitro finishes, but I can say I've sprayed it on poly a couple of times and had no issues. Yeah, so that stuff is already hardened. Now, what I'm going to do to clean this up, kind of level those out, I'm going to use a trick that may or may not be familiar with. You just take a razor blade and you create a scraper out of it. And so, take a little bit of tape, put on each side of the razor, and that'll leave one side exposed. Before you do that, you just take like a bare razor blade, and you can use anything that's hard and metal. Even like this, you can just take and run it across there. Run the blade just across that edge. And when you do that, it folds that metal on the blade. So it's actually sticking out to the side now rather than straight down. So now I can come in and do this. And because of the tape, I'm not damaging the board. I'm actually getting in there pretty flush. And you can just kind of go back like this, and it's gonna scrape you down flat. You can see how that's already coming together nicely. So fill the wood with that. I'm gonna scrape it with this, and I'll come back with a little bit of sandpaper. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I said I'd show you how to kind of clean it up after the fact. I didn't get any video while I was doing it, but what I actually have found is pretty good for this is a nail buffer filing thing. You can get this at like any drugstore, like any Walmart, Target, something like that, like $1 or $2. And because it's like a foam pad inside of it, you don't really have to worry about damaging the radius of the fretboard. And you can actually use it on the frets as well. Because you've got, your finer grits, you can shine it up. So that's what I did here. I, just kind of went through here. I didn't do the 240 or the 320 grit. I did do a little bit of the 400 grit on the frets, or not the frets, the board. And then went to the 500 and then 600 grit on the board and frets, and kind of kept doing the steps up until I got to 1500. I also had some fret erasers from Stumac, which are pretty cool. They go up to, I guess, 2000 grit. So I went ahead and rubbed those on the top as well of the frets, just to kind of shine them up a bit. And I put some oil on. This is where we're at. So you can see now we are in a very different spot than we were earlier. None of the frets, that one's a little on the edge, but none of them are going past binding. So you can see how tight the tolerances are of these things. Okay.